Hello, and welcome back to Anatomy. Today we want to talk about mammals. And we are mammals, and so the question really becomes, what makes this huge, diverse group that really dominate the planet? What makes us different from all the other vertebrates? So first of all, we've been around for a fairly long time. Mammals first evolved around 225 million years ago during the Mesozoic era. They are small, rodent-like little guys, furry. They're mostly probably nocturnal, and they're getting along quite well with dinosaurs, although they're probably getting eaten quite a lot by dinosaurs too, and reptiles. But we evolve in, and by we I mean mammals, evolved during this age of reptiles and the age of dinosaurs. And so we stay in the shadows for a very long period of time. But at the end of the Mesozoic era, just as an aside, is divided into three periods, and that is the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. At the end of the Cretaceous, which you've probably heard of, there was a mass extinction. Probably a comet hit the planet and caused massive climate change about 65 million years ago. Well, when that event happens, the Mesozoic and the Cretaceous period end, and dinosaurs are gone. They disappear, and they leave all of these niches open, and it is mammals that fill all of the roles that the dinosaurs used to have. And so the mammals rise to become the dominant group for the era that we're in now, which is called the Cenozoic era. Again, begins about 65 million years. Now, today, there are about 5,000 species of mammals, around 21 orders, and you can see that I've put a little link in here to some information about each of the orders, and then there's also information at the end of this about those, but this is a little bit more detailed, so on the PowerPoint, you can go ahead and check that out. Now, mammals are probably the most varied out of all of the groups, and just to give you an example, we're varied in all kinds of stuff, but size, we're the most varied in size for sure. You have the smallest, which is the bumblebee bat, and that's what you see over here in the corner, and this weighs just less than 2 grams and is about an inch long. Very, very tiny, will fit easily in the palm of your hand. But then blue whales, also mammals, right? They are about 130 metric tons. Okay, that's 130,000 pounds, and they are up to about 100 feet in length. The blue whale is the largest animal that has ever lived that we know of. And so today we see some of the smallest and some of the largest in a single group, and that's pretty amazing. So what makes a mammal? Well, first of all, milk, right? We get the name mammal from mammary glands. And these are the things that produce milk. We also have hair or fur, depending on, how you want to define that. But hair and fur, it's the same thing. We are endothermic. We generate heat. We do not rely on the environment to warm us up. We produce our own heat, which means we have to eat on a regular basis. Side note, birds are also endothermic, but everybody else is going to be exothermic. Now, we all breathe with lungs on land. We have a diaphragm that makes that happen. The diaphragm is a muscle. We'll talk about it a little bit later on in the course. And it is what pulls the lungs, so air comes in, and then what allows for the air to be pushed out. We also have a four-chambered heart, right? So do birds, by the way. Birds also have lungs. Okay, now mammals have a highly developed nervous system. We have a little bit larger brains. We also have external ears. We have cervical vertebrae, right? 7 of them. Well, lots of animals have cervical vertebrae. That's just the stuff around the neck. But we have 7. We have very efficient kidneys that are shaped differently. Remember, we get to the metanephros, whereas some of the other vertebrates stop at either the pronephros or the mesonephros. We have specialized teeth that allow us to exploit all kinds of foods, which is one of the things that allows mammals to really be so radically different, is that we can specialize for different foods. And the other thing is we have a higher level of parental care, and that goes to that highly developed nervous system and that brain that we have. We exist in social groups in a way that other animals don't, and we're born a little bit underdeveloped comparatively, and so we need to put more effort into getting our offspring to survive as a whole group. Okay. Now let's start with hair, because this is the most obvious thing. When you look at a mammal, you're going to see hair. And there are really two major types of coat hair. There's the underhair and the guard hair. And the guard hairs are the ones that you see. They're the coloration. They protect the animal a little bit. And then the underhair is that soft hair that's closer to the body. Well, they all come out of the body, but that's shorter. And this is for insulation. And the hairs will trap air in them next to the skin. And that air is heated up by the body because we're endothermic, and that acts like a little, heating blanket for all practical purposes. And this turns out that these are really, really dense in aquatic mammals, because it also helps with waterproofing and stuff like that, and keeping warm, because where mammals are living is typically cold. So mammals also shed seasonally. They'll have a summer coat and a winter coat. The winter coat is usually thicker, the summer coat is thinner, and it can be a different color depending on the environment. What you're looking at is a snowshoe hare right here, and they're brown in the summer and white in the winter when it snows. Now, some of the hairs are specialized, and so you have whiskers or vibrissae that provide this tactile sense, and they are especially long in nocturnal and burrowing mammals where they don't have the eyesight being as important, and so the whiskers will tell them how big things are, what's going on. Cats, for instance, and you can see this lovely little jaguar right here, their whiskers are the width of their body, and so if they stick their little head in something and their whiskers won't fit, their body won't fit either, and so it works out quite well. Now, hair can also be specialized into these other structures like horns, and these are not true horns. If it's made of hair, we just call it a horn, but it's not a true hair, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But here you see the rhino. Both of these, quote, horns are actually just hair. Okay, now speaking of horns, horns are this bone core, right? So they actually grow out of the animal's head, and then they have what's called keratinized epidermis that surrounds it, and so you get this hard layer that's really a lot like fingernail, actually. It's a little bit harder, but it's the same kind of idea. Horns are typically found in both sexes. They will grow continuously, or they might not continue to get larger, but they are constantly being nourished and fed. They are highly vascularized, and so they have blood vessels going through them because they're living tissue. You see them in animals like cows, goats, sheep, stuff like that, antelope. Okay, then antlers are different. Antlers are solid bone. They don't have the keratinized epidermis, and they're only vascularized during their growth periods. They're typically found in males, although caribou actually have them in all of them. So caribou, reindeer, because those are actually the same animal. But they're going to have them in both sexes. But here's the thing, they grow seasonally, and it's usually during mating season, because remember, they're males, and so they're going to fall off at the end of mating season. And so you've got this period where they start to grow. They're covered with velvet, as you can see in this reindeer here, and then the velvet is a tissue that has all the blood vessels in it. That will die when the antlers are done growing, and then it will, hang off, and it's actually pretty gross, but they'll rub trees and they'll get it all off, and finally all this velvet will fall off and they'll have just the bone, but there are no nerves, there are no blood vessels in any of this, and then they'll shed them, and so for the rest of the season they won't have them. This is a reindeer and this is a white-tailed deer. Okay, now we also have highly specialized glands, and we have 4 big types of glands, and those are sweat glands, scent glands, sebaceous glands, and mammary glands. And sweat glands we know quite well, those are for heat regulation. Scent glands, we don't have the kinds of scent glands that a lot of other mammals do, and so these are for communication. They'll produce pheromones that they rub all over the place, and you can see here you have this deer, and they have glands all over them, and it allows them to mark their territories, so they can warn others of the same species that they are there, and so it kind of works like a defense system. It's like the Great Wall of Deer, except in smell. The other thing, too, is that it allows them to leave scent markers for each other in terms of sexual selection, and so females and males can leave scents to say, hey, I'm here, and all this good stuff. Mostly it's going to be males that are going to do a lot of the scenting, because they're the ones that hold the territories. Sebaceous glands, these secrete what's called sebum, and sebum lubricates and waterproofs skin and hair, so you're definitely going to see this a lot in animals that go in the water or live in the water. But everybody's got it, right? Everybody has the sebum. We have it too. And then mammary glands we're familiar with. That's for lactation. Okay. Now, heterodont dentition, this is the specialized teeth we were talking about before. And I think actually probably the craziest teeth that you will see anywhere and super specialized are these teeth right here. They are saws, right? They are like ice picks and saws. And this is the set of teeth from a crab eater seal, and that's what they eat, crabs. And so you can see how really helpful this would be to kind of saw through the exoskeleton of the crab, right? Which was actually pretty cool. Anyway, so here are some others. You can see that, of course, herbivores and carnivores and omnivores are going to have different types of teeth. So just check that picture out. Okay, now endothermy. We are warm-blooded, and you can see here this is a gorilla. You can see he is generating his own heat. The hair actually works quite well to keep that heat in. You can see that insulating property working. Of course, there's no hair around the face, and there's no hair right here, and so you can see the heat escaping. This, on the other hand, is a spider that is not endothermic, and so you can see that it is cold, right? Oh, and here's the person who's holding it, generating their own heat. The spider's probably enjoying that heat action. Now, it turns out that the metabolic rate is going to increase with a decrease in mass. And so the smaller the animal, the higher the metabolic rate. And so they actually have to eat more in relation to their body mass than larger animals. And so metabolism will slow way down as you start getting larger and larger. Okay, so there are three types of mammals. There are the prototherians, who are the monotremes, and we've talked about them a little bit before when we talked about development, but they are oviparous, which means they lay eggs. They include the platypus and the echidna, and there are two species of platypus and one species of echidna, and then after hatching, they just kind of sweat milk for all practical purposes. They don't have any nipples, and so the little guys just kind of lick up the milk after they hatch. Side note, the echidna actually has a pouch that is kind of like the marsupial pouch, except there's no nipple inside of it. Okay, therians are the marsupials, and these are the pouched animals who have live births, and then the offspring crawl up into the pouch, which is called the marsupium. And while nursing, here's a fun thing about marsupials. When they're nursing, they can actually become pregnant again, and they undergo what's called embryonic diapause, and the embryos don't develop until that first joey is gone, right, out of the pouch. And another fun fact, possums are the only North American marsupial. They're actually the only marsupial out of Australia. So Australia, okay, so monotremes evolve first, then marsupials evolve, and placentals don't evolve for a while, but when they do, placentals, which we're going to talk about in just a second, the eutherians, are so successful that they actually take over and they outcompete marsupials everywhere except the possum, who is a great competitor. Now, when Australia separates off, there are no placentals at the time, and so Australia keeps its marsupials, but here's an interesting thing. Because they're going to have the same selective pressures in the same kinds of environments, whether they're in Australia or some other place, they end up evolving to look the same. And you can see here are the little mice structures, here, or not structures, little organisms. Here are the little mole guys, here's the flying squirrel versus the sugar glider, woodchuck, wombat, wolverine, Tasmanian devil, kangaroo, and the Patagonian cavy, which is kind of rabbity. It's not really a rabbit, but it's kind of like that. But anyway, so you can see the big similarities, and this shows you that it doesn't really matter what type of mammal it is, because they're all mammals, they're having the same types of pressures because that's what the environment is doing. Okay, so eutherians, this is us, placental mammals. So while marsupials have a really long lactation period, placentals have a long gestation period, which means that their offspring are way more developed than the marsupial offspring. And you've probably seen the little pinky, hairless, kind of freaky looking baby kangaroos, things like that. So they crawl in and then they hang out until they develop. Our embryos remain in the uterus, and they are receiving all of their nourishment through the placenta, and so they come out more developed, and then they start nursing. And you can see, here's just some comparisons. This is the placental, the eutherian, this is the therian, this is the eutherian, this is the therian, the marsupial. Okay, here are the main categories. And if you just want to go through that, you can. I have highlighted in red the pictures that you're seeing. So here's the possum, this is the pika, this is the hyrax, this is the tree shrew. And just a fun fact about hyraxes, they look like little vampires. These are not teeth, these are actually tusks, because the closest relative to the hyrax is the elephant. Kind of crazy, but it's true. All right, and then here you've got the flying lemurs, the glugos, that's this guy right here. This is an eye, which is a type of prosimian, which is a primate, so that's one of your cousins. How'd you like to have that little guy over for Thanksgiving? Here's the bat. Here are some pigs, right? And pigs are something you should pay attention to. And then here is a dolphin. And here's the last set. You can see there's lots of mammals, lots of variety. That's obviously an elephant, this is an armadillo, this is an aardvark, and this is a pangolin. And actually these are really interesting because they look really similar because they actually live in kind of similar environments, except the pangolin. The pangolin is actually different, but you can see the aardvark and the armadillo. They are not that closely related. I mean, they are, but not really. Okay, so anyway, if you have any questions, again, please look through these mammal groups and see kind of what there's going on, what they are going on. That made no sense. See what is going on with each of them. Also, I would like you to know the 4 largest groups of mammals, and you can figure this out from this table that is in this lecture and the PowerPoint. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.